My name is Caleb Morrison. I am 38 years old, and I walked into my little sister's wedding believing I had finally earned one quiet seat in a room full of people who never knew what it cost to get her there. I did not come looking for praise. I did not come expecting speeches about the years I worked double shifts until my hands cracked from the cold, or the nights I fell asleep at the kitchen table because every hour I was awake was an hour I could earn something. I came because the girl I helped raise was becoming a wife. And for one day, I wanted to feel proud without having to explain why I belonged. The Vineyard estate was manicured, expensive, and still in the way wealthy places always are, as if even the wind had been asked to behave itself. I found my table near the edge of the pavilion, nodded at the white roses, reached for the name card beside my plate, and then my entire body went cold. It did not say brother of the bride. It did not say family. It said the dropout handyman who raised her out of pity. For a second, I thought I had misread it. Then the laughter started, not from confused strangers, but from people who had clearly been waiting for me to find it. The groom's relatives covered their mouths, leaned into each other, and laughed like my humiliation was the evening's first toast. I looked across the room at my little sister, and all I could think was, not today. I would not ruin her wedding. I would swallow the shame, set the card face down, and slip out quietly. But before I could take one step toward the door, she caught my arm. She had seen it from the head table. She had seen their faces. She stood up so fast her chair caught the tablecloth, crossed the pavilion in her wedding dress, and looked straight at her new father-in-law. Her voice was calm, but it silenced the string quartet. She said, "You just made the most expensive mistake of your life." The room went still so fast it felt like someone had switched off the air. My little sister was still holding my arm, and every person who had laughed now looked like they had swallowed something they could not name. I could feel the place card in my free hand, that small rectangle of malice sitting there in elegant script like proof that cruelty had been planned, printed, approved, and laid carefully beside my plate. This was not a mistake. Mistakes do not come in matching calligraphy. Mistakes do not sit at a formal dinner table waiting for one specific person to find them. Across the pavilion, the groom's father slowly rose from his seat. I had not known his name when I arrived. To me, he had only been the silver-haired man in the photographs, the man whose son my sister loved, the man whose handshake every other guest seemed nervous to earn. But now every eye on that estate turned toward him as if he owned not just the venue, but the right to decide what counted as acceptable. He straightened his tie, looked at my sister, and offered a small, patient smile. "Sit down," he said. "You're creating a scene." My sister did not move. "Explain the card." He glanced at it the way you glance at something you put there yourself, but wish to pretend you have never seen. "It was a harmless joke," he said. "Your brother looks old enough not to need protecting." A few guests shifted in their chairs. Nobody spoke. That was the moment I understood something painful. Some people had laughed because they found it funny. Some had laughed because they were afraid not to. And the rest had gone quiet because silence has always been the easiest costume for cowardice. I kept my voice steady and said, "If it was harmless, why was I the punchline?" His smile thinned. "Because people from your background tend to take everything as an attack." My sister's hand tightened on my arm, but I did not let her step forward. "Not yet." The man looked at her and said, "You should be very careful tonight. A young woman in your position should understand the value of the family she has married into." He gestured toward the string lights, the imported flowers, the rolling vineyard behind the pavilion, as if all of it were evidence in a trial only he had been appointed to judge. "My son has opened doors for you that you never would have reached on your own." I heard the full insult in that sentence. So did my sister. I said, "She reached every door because she worked for it." He looked at me with open amusement. "And you helped, I'm sure. Everyone has a difficult story. But hardship does not make a person educated. It does not make them refined. It certainly does not make them equal." A quiet sound came from somewhere near the bridal table. My face burned, but I refused to look away. I thought about the years I had worked while other people slept, the overtime shifts on construction sites in February, the financial aid forms I filled out at midnight on a library computer because our electricity had been shut off, The time my sister got accepted to a summer science program and wept because she thought we could not afford the registration fee. I thought about selling my grandfather's watch and telling her I had lost it because I did not want her to know what her opportunity had cost us. I said, I never came here asking to be equal to your money. I came here as family. He leaned slightly forward. Family is not a word you use to claim space in rooms you were never meant to occupy. My sister finally let go of my arm and stepped beside me. Her voice was quiet, but every table heard it. He belongs anywhere I stand. The man's expression shifted, not dramatically, but enough. The performance was ending and something colder was beginning. He drew out his phone and made no effort to lower his voice. Perhaps we should revisit certain arrangements before this marriage causes any further complications. The groom's mother whispered his name sharply, but he continued. He looked at my sister and said, contracts can be reconsidered. Introductions can be withdrawn. Invitations to the right circles can be paused. You may believe dignity is free, but you are about to discover it carries a price. My sister stared at him and said, thank you. He blinked. For what? She answered, for saying all of that in front of witnesses. For the first time that evening, the smile left his face entirely. The room had changed. It was no longer a room laughing at an embarrassing brother. It was a room watching a powerful man reveal that his generosity had always been a transaction, and his welcome had always come with a leash. Until that moment, the groom had stood frozen near the head table, pale beneath the warm vineyard light. He looked less like a man on his wedding night, and more like someone watching the ground split open between the future he had been promised and the truth standing in front of him. His cufflinks were perfect. His suit was perfect. The photographer circling the perimeter was probably capturing perfect images. But his face was not performing anything. His face was showing the first honest thing I had seen from that side of the family all evening. His father turned toward him with a look that told his son to remember who had financed his confidence. Stay out of this, he said. But he did not stay out of it. He walked toward my sister first, not his father. And that small, deliberate choice altered the entire room. Did you know about the card? My sister asked him. Her voice broke just enough for me to hear the fear beneath the question. He shook his head quickly. No, I swear to you I didn't. Then he looked at me. I am sorry. I am genuinely sorry. I wanted to believe him. I did. But shame has a way of making every apology arrive late. Before I could answer, his father laughed softly. Do not apologize to people who came looking for offense. The groom turned on him. That was not offense. That was humiliation. His mother rushed forward, smiling at the guests with the tight discipline of a woman who has spent decades managing her husband's damage. Darling, not in front of everyone. The groom looked around the pavilion, and I think for the first time he truly saw who was watching. Some guests were mortified. Some were fascinated. Some were already typing into their phones. A handful wore the guilty expression of people who wish they could go back 15 minutes and choose a better reaction. He raised his chin and said, good. Let them watch. His father's face hardened. You are being emotional. He answered, no. I am finally paying attention. That sentence landed harder than a shout. I saw my sister look at her husband with hope and fear moving across her face at the same time. He turned to me and said, she told me what you did for her. She told me you quit school. She told me you worked every job you could find. She told me you raised her when both of you were barely old enough to be called adults. I heard it. I believed it. But I don't think I understood what it meant until right now. His father said flatly, you understood the sentimental version. He faced his father fully then. What version would you prefer? The one where a teenage boy lost both parents and still kept his sister fed? The one where he built her future while everyone around him built their image? Or the one where you decided the right way to welcome him was to print an insult and leave it on his plate? His mother said softly, please stop. But he did not stop. My sister asked, did you know your father wanted co-signature authority over our finances after the wedding? His eyes widened. His father said it was a standard precaution. He looked sick. A precaution against what? Against my wife having a family you cannot control. His father took one step forward. You are too young to understand how people attach themselves to success. The groom's jaw set. No, I understand perfectly. You think love is only trustworthy when you can audit it. The pavilion shifted. Guests who had laughed at me minutes earlier now looked deeply uncomfortable. Not because their conscience had awakened, but because cruelty had stopped appearing safe. Reputation had entered the room, and reputation frightened them more than morality ever would. The groom stepped beside my sister and took her hand. "If you insult him again," he told his father, "I will end this reception tonight." His father stared at him the way a man stares at property that has started making its own decisions. "You would throw your future away over this?" He answered, "No. You are the one throwing it away." My sister looked at me, and I could see the little girl I had raised inside the woman she had become. Fierce and shaking and restraining herself by the thinnest thread. I wanted to protect her the way I always had. But for once, she and the man beside her were protecting me. The father leaned close to his son and said very quietly, "You have no idea what loyalty to these people will cost you." He did not look away. "Then I suppose it is time I find out." His jaw tightened, and in that moment I knew the man had stopped seeing his son as a child and started seeing him as an asset walking out the door. The wedding should have been saved by one honest apology. That was all it required. One sentence, one breath of humility, one acknowledgement that the card was cruel and that my place in my sister's life was not something to be mocked on printed paper. But men who confuse wealth with authority rarely apologize when they still believe punishment is within reach. The father straightened his shoulders, looked calmly across the pavilion, and picked up his phone again. "Marcus," he said when someone answered. He did not step away. He wanted us to hear. "Call Sterling Group first thing tomorrow. Tell them the consulting arrangement connected to the new Morrison hire is under review pending a conflict of interest assessment." My sister's hand found mine. The groom went absolutely still. He continued, "And contact the Arts Foundation office. The vocational apprenticeship pilot linked to Kayla Morrison's name should be suspended until I say otherwise. I will not have my foundation's reputation attached to individuals who stage public grievances for sympathy." For a moment, I could not breathe. The job threat was aimed at my sister's husband, and that was cruel, but it was pointed at someone who had choices. The foundation was different. For 3 years, I had been quietly building a vocational apprenticeship program for young men in our county who had aged out of foster care or dropped out of high school and had no one to teach them a trade. Young men who were capable but invisible. Men who had nobody to explain how to show up to a job site interview or how to get licensed or how to open a bank account without being turned away for lack of documentation. Men who had once been me. He had found the only thing in my life that still felt larger than survival, and he was threatening to bury it because I had embarrassed him by existing. The groom moved so fast his groomsmen had to grab his arms. "Let go of me," he said, his voice shaking. I stepped in front of him. "No." He looked at me like I had betrayed him. I lowered my voice. "Do not let him turn your love into his ammunition." That stopped him cold. I understood exactly what the father wanted. He wanted the groom angry. He wanted one shove, one raised voice, one ugly moment he could point to forever and say, "This is the kind of family they come from." My sister stepped between her father-in-law and us. "Hang up." He looked at her the way executives look at subordinates who have forgotten their position. "Hang up," she said, "or we leave." Her new mother-in-law pressed her hands over her mouth. Every guest in that pavilion now understood the stakes. This was not a family disagreement. This was a man using money as a weapon in public, and 2 people were standing in front of the blade. He lowered the phone slowly. His eyes stayed cold. "You think walking out makes you principled," he said to them. "No," my sister answered. "Standing here does." He looked at me. "This is what your family imports into a room. Chaos, grievance, poverty wearing the costume of virtue." My sister answered. "And this is what yours imports. Control wearing the costume of generosity." The father smiled, but there was nothing warm in it. "Enjoy your moment. By tomorrow morning, you will understand the difference between pride and power." Then he walked out of the pavilion. Not loudly, not with theater. He left with the unhurried calm of a man who believed the real damage had already been arranged. The wedding continued, but only the way a clock continues after the battery has begun to die. People applauded at the wrong moments. The cake was cut. Music restarted. Toasts were given in the careful language of people determined not to say anything true. Some guests came to me and whispered that they were embarrassed by what had happened. Whispers after laughter do not repair much. I stood near the edge of the lights and watched my sister and her husband hold each other with the expressions of two people who had aged a decade in a single hour. I wanted the night to end. I wanted to believe the worst was finished. But I had learned something about men like that father a long time ago. They do not leave because they are defeated. They leave because they want privacy for the next move. My phone rang before sunrise the following morning. My sister's name on the screen. When I answered, she did not say hello. She said he did it. I sat up. The job. There was a pause. Gone. Sterling Group sent a message at 6 this morning. They said they were moving in a different direction. A breath. And there's more. I already knew what the more was. I opened my email while she stayed on the line. There it was from the foundation in the smooth, apologetic language organizations use when someone important has made a call. My apprenticeship pilot had been placed on administrative hold pending compliance review. I stared at those words until my eyes stopped reading and started just seeing shapes. Compliance review meant buried. It meant a phone call had been made. It meant that young men who needed someone to teach them how to wire an outlet or frame a wall would wait longer, because a wealthy man's pride had been bruised. Caleb, my sister, said, "Say something." I took a slow breath. I am thinking. That was always what people misunderstood about me. I did not shout when I was genuinely angry. I got quiet, and quiet is where decisions live. An hour later, they arrived at my apartment together, she in jeans and a simple shirt, her husband in yesterday's clothes, both of them looking wrung out and awake in a way sleep could not fix. He sat at my kitchen table and placed his phone in front of me. "You need to see something." The first thing was a message thread with a wedding planner. My stomach dropped when I saw the attachment. The place card had not been a careless mistake. The insult had been submitted by the father's personal assistant 4 days before the wedding, with specific placement instructions. Not near my seat. At my seat. As if my humiliation had been built into the seating arrangement the same way the centerpieces had been. My sister whispered he planned it. Her husband nodded, his face very still. I didn't know. I need you to believe that. I looked at him for a long moment. Then I nodded once. I believe you. He exhaled. Then he opened a voice memo on the phone. My cousin sent this last night. She had been too scared to say anything before. After what happened at the reception, she couldn't stay quiet anymore. The recording played. The father's voice came through relaxed and conversational. The voice of a man comfortable in a room where he was certain no one would challenge him. "The brother is the complication," he said. "Men like him turn sacrifice into a claim. If my son marries into that family, the first thing that has to happen is establishing where the loyalty belongs." A voice in the background asked what would happen if it didn't. The father laughed. "Then we teach them what scarcity feels like." My sister's husband stopped breathing for a moment. His face went completely still, which frightened me more than rage would have. A second clip followed. The father's voice again, sharper this time. "Working-class men always make survival sound like character. Mostly it is just failure with a better narrative." I set the phone down. My hands were steady. The words hurt, but they also clarified everything. Men like him survived because they kept their cruelty private and their manners polished. Now, for the first time, both versions of him were sitting on my kitchen table. The groom said, "I am posting all of it right now." "No," I said. He looked at me the same way my sister had looked at me when she was 15, and I told her she couldn't spend money we didn't have. "Not yet." She leaned forward. "He already froze your program." "I know," I said. "And if we post now, he will call it a scorned family making noise after a ruined wedding. He will say we manipulated his son against him. He will say I'm using my sister's marriage for attention. He knows how to survive a scandal when it looks emotional. He has done it before." Her husband sat slowly. "So what do we do?" I looked at him. "You call him. You tell him you want a private conversation. You tell him you want to understand his perspective. You tell him you are willing to listen." His eyes changed as he understood. "You want to give him the chance to apologize." "Yes," I said. "And if he refuses, I want him to prove exactly who he is without a crowd of guests around him to perform for." My sister looked from him to me, and something settled across her face. Not peace exactly, resolution. So we let him talk. I nodded. Men like him always do. Before they left, the groom looked around my apartment. The second-hand table, the tools stacked near the window, the binder of apprenticeship program materials I had been building for 3 years. He looked at it the way you look at something you have been told is worthless and are only now beginning to see clearly. He said quietly, he has no idea who he is dealing with. I almost smiled. No, I said, he thinks he is dealing with a dropout. He is dealing with documentation. The meeting was arranged for the following Saturday at the family estate in Connecticut. Calling it an estate felt like an understatement. Stone gateposts, iron fencing, a driveway long enough to suggest that whoever built it wanted visitors to feel small before they reached the door. Everything about the property communicated permanence, and permanence was the thing men like him most wanted you to envy. As we came through the gate, my sister reached across and gripped my hand the way she had when she was 9 years old, and we were walking into the foster coordinator's office together. This time I squeezed hers first. Before we got out of the car, the groom looked at both of us and said, if he apologizes genuinely, I want this to stop. I said, so do I. I meant it. This was never about punishment. It was about truth, and truth requires witnesses, because people with power have always been very skilled at calling pain a misunderstanding. We were shown into a formal sitting room where the father waited with his wife and a family attorney. He did not stand when we entered. Men like him used chairs as a statement. The room smelled like leather and old flowers. The kind of room where every object had been chosen to remind you that you owned less. Let's be efficient, he said. I assume reality has arrived. My sister's jaw tightened, but she stayed quiet. I sat down across from him. We are here, I said, because your son asked for one private conversation before any of this becomes public. He smiled. Public. That word keeps appearing. Almost like a threat. It is a choice, I said. You can acknowledge what you did, stop interfering with his career, restore the foundation review, and apologize for what you placed on my table. Or you can continue pretending cruelty is leadership. His wife looked down at her lap. The attorney shifted his weight. The father leaned back. People like you always arrive with a speech. My sister's husband said very quietly, people like us. The man shrugged. People who confuse endurance with merit. People who believe surviving poverty entitles them to rooms they were not built for. I held his eyes. Poverty does not cancel a person's worth. He smiled. I did not say it did. Behavior cancels worth. Your sister stopped her own husband's wedding reception because a name card offended her. You turned my son against his family. And now you sit in my home, making demands as if you hold any leverage at all. My sister stood. Dad, stop. He looked at her with a patience that was not patience at all. No, you need to hear this clearly. Sentiment is not a foundation. Your husband is capable, yes, but he is emotionally dependent on a past he should have outgrown. And his brother-in-law is the weight keeping him anchored there. The groom stood so fast the attorney flinched. I raised one hand. He stopped. The father's mouth curved. You see, she controls him. No, I said. She trusts me, because I never held her future over her head. That erased the smile. For the first time I saw a real anger move beneath the surface. Do not lecture me in my house. My sister stepped forward. Then stop behaving like wealth is the same thing as wisdom. He turned to her. If you continue choosing them over this family, you choose it with nothing. No trust fund transfer. No access to the connections I spent 30 years building. No calls made on your behalf when the world gets difficult. I will not invest in people who treat loyalty as optional. His wife said his name softly. He ignored her. Then he looked directly at me. I am prepared to make this simple, he said. I will offer you a significant sum of money. Enough to fund your little program. Enough to be generous by any reasonable measure. In exchange, you create appropriate distance from their marriage. Quietly, privately. Consider it recognition of your years of sacrifice. My sister made a sound I had never heard from her before. Not crying. Something colder. The groom looked like he had been physically struck. I felt only stillness. You think I worked for 15 years so I could sell her to whoever made the highest offer? He said, I think everyone discovers their price eventually. Men with your history usually discover it faster than they expect. The room went absolutely silent. Even the attorney looked at the floor. His wife made a small, broken sound. My sister's voice shook, but her words did not. Keep your money. Keep your connections. Keep everything. I would rather build my life from nothing than inherit comfort from a man who thinks love should come with an exit clause. His face changed. For the first time, he looked frightened. Not of losing money, of losing control. I placed my phone on the table and pressed play. First, the voice memo about teaching us scarcity. Then the recording about working-class men and failure with a better narrative. Then the audio from that very room, less than 5 minutes old, his own voice offering me money to disappear from my sister's life. His face drained of color. His wife covered her mouth with both hands. The attorney rose immediately and said, Richard, do not say another word. Richard stood anyway. He stepped toward me. You have no idea what you have just done. I stood as well. I was not shaking. Yes, I do, I said. I have given the truth somewhere to stand. He pointed toward the door. Get out of my house. My sister looked at him for the last time that afternoon. That is the first honest sentence you have spoken today. We left without another exchange. In the car, none of us spoke for almost a minute. Then my sister wiped her eyes, looked straight at the windshield, and said, Post it. Her husband turned toward me. This time, I did not say not yet. I did not post it with rage. That mattered more than people understood afterward. I did not add inflammatory language, dramatic framing, or editorializing. I posted the place card, the wedding planner messages, the voice memo, and the recording from the sitting room, alongside a statement so plain it could not be twisted without the person twisting it revealing themselves. I wrote that I had attended my sister's wedding as the brother who raised her, that I had been publicly humiliated by the groom's father using a printed place card that had been deliberately prepared days in advance, that he had used his influence to threaten a career and freeze a vocational program for young men who had no other resources, that when given a private opportunity to apologize, he offered me money to remove myself from my sister's life. I also wrote that this was not about a ruined wedding. It was about what happens when people with power decide that the lives of working people are available for purchase or disposal. Then I closed my phone and went to work because my hands needed something real to do while the world shifted. By midday, the post had crossed into multiple online communities. By evening, it was moving through social media in a way I had not anticipated and did not entirely control. Tradesmen wrote about being spoken to like that father had spoken to me. Foster care alumni wrote about raising siblings before they were old enough to shave. Older brothers and sisters from every kind of background wrote about the invisible labor of keeping a family together when there was no one else available to do it. Teachers wrote about students who needed programs like mine. Veterans wrote about coming home and needing exactly the kind of apprenticeship pathway I had been trying to build. Some messages were a single sentence. One man wrote, I raised my little sister too. Nobody ever thanked me either. Thank you for saying it. One woman wrote, my brother gave up everything for me. I'm calling him right now. Those messages did something to me that public attention alone could not. They reminded me that humiliation tries to make you feel singular, but truth can return you to a community you did not know was already waiting. 2 days later, Sterling Group released a statement acknowledging that the offer had been withdrawn under inappropriate external pressure and that they were reviewing their ethics protocols. They extended the offer again. The groom thanked them, then declined. He said he wanted to work somewhere that did not require public exposure to locate its own integrity. That same afternoon, the foundation called me directly. They restored the review process with a written apology. Within the week, the apprenticeship program received more in direct donations than I had raised in the previous 2 years combined. People sent $20, $10, sometimes only a message that said someone did something like this for me once. That broke me in a way the insult never had. Not from sadness, from recognition. For the first time in my adult life, the weight I had been carrying alone was being lifted by more than 2 hands. The father did not recover easily. His company's board announced an internal governance review. A municipal infrastructure contract he had spent years lobbying to secure was suspended. 3 nonprofit boards removed him from honorary advisory positions. Business partners issued careful statements written in the neutral language of people determined not to be photographed beside a specific name. But the most significant loss did not appear in any announcement. His son never returned to that house. He and my sister moved into a small apartment 6 blocks from mine. Mismatched furniture, radiators that knocked at midnight. More honesty in those 2 rooms than that estate had held in 30 years. His mother left the property 6 weeks later. I never learned whether it was courage or shame or the accumulated exhaustion of a woman who had spent decades explaining her husband to everyone who encountered him. Perhaps all 3 in proportions only she could name. The apprenticeship program opened at the end of the summer. On the first morning, 11 young men showed up. By the second week, there were 19. We helped them get licensed in trades, build professional portfolios, navigate the paperwork for small business registration, and learn how to talk about where they came from without apologizing for it. My sister volunteered on Thursdays. Her husband helped with financial literacy workshops on alternate weekends. A retired electrician from a neighborhood offered to certify students in basic wiring. A local contractor donated his supply warehouse for Saturday sessions. What Richard had tried to bury became larger than anything I could have built alone. And every time I watched one of those young men walk out standing a little straighter, I thought about the man who had tried to destroy the program because he believed hurting me would demonstrate his power. 3 months after the wedding, the father came to my apartment alone. No driver, no attorney, no version of himself constructed for an audience. He stood at my door and said 2 words. I was wrong. I believed that he knew it. I also understood that he had learned it too late to change what the knowing cost him. I did not invite him in. I said, "You believed money could purchase silence, obedience, and eventually forgiveness. It cannot purchase any of those things. And it cannot purchase the one you lost most completely, which is the respect of a son who finally saw you without the frame you built around yourself." His eyes dropped. For the first time, he looked smaller than his own name. I closed the door gently, not from weakness, from the kind of freedom that arrives only when you stop needing someone to admit what you already know. That is the thing I hope stays with people long after they finish this story. Education is not only about the schools you attended or the credentials you accumulated or the rooms you were invited into. Real education is learning how to see another person's worth without first consulting their bank account. It is learning accountability before you need it, and gratitude before you lose what required it. I did not raise my sister because I expected recognition. I raised her because she was mine to raise, and because love does not wait for optimal conditions. She did not become the woman she is because a wealthy family opened a door. She became who she is because someone kept a roof over her until she was ready to build her own. And I did not win because the internet punished a powerful man. I won because I stopped waiting for powerful people to define what I was worth. The deepest form of justice was not watching him lose contracts or titles or the quiet authority he had spent decades assembling. It was watching the thing he mocked become useful to other people. It was watching shame become service and humiliation become purpose. Money can buy attention. It can buy access. It can even buy fear for a period of time. But it cannot buy the one thing Richard lost when his son looked at him clearly and chose differently. So if you were sitting where I was sitting, with that card in your hand and that laughter in the room, would you fold it into your pocket and leave quietly? Or would you let the truth cost whatever it needed to cost? My team and I create fictional stories built to feel real, relatable, and meaningful. This story is made for entertainment, reflection, and the belief that dignity is worth defending. We hope you take something from it, even if only the reminder that the work done in quiet rooms by people no one applauds is often the most valuable work of all.